How's it going, Raptors Nation? Welcome to the Raptors Nation podcast. My name is Luca Rosano, and I am with all of you on this Thursday for a very special edition of the Raptors Nation podcast, because it just so happens that the NBA has officially released its regular season schedule. So we now know the Raptors' regular season schedule. So on this one, I'm going to simply react to the Raptors 2023-24 regular season schedule. We're going to take a look at some key dates and get into it month by month. If you are listening to this on Apple iTunes or Spotify, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. It does help a ton. And if you are watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more Raptors content just like this. You can also follow me on Twitter at Luca Rosano 3, or X, I should say. It's not called Twitter anymore. Going to take some time to get used to that. Okay, so before I share my screen here, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, as we can take a look at the schedule together, just want to go over some notable games. So the Raptors opening night will be against the Minnesota Timberwolves on October 25th. Then it will not be long before Nick Nurse makes his return to Toronto. The Raptors' third regular season game, which is on October 28th, we'll see the Sixers come to town. So it's going to be very interesting to see the type of reception Nick Nurse gets just 3 games into the season. Then the in-season tournament for the Raptors begins on November 17th against the Celtics. We, of course, learned that the other day. The NBA champion Denver Nuggets are in town on December 20th. Larry and the Heat are in town on January 17th. Kawhi and the Clippers are in town on January 26th. And then probably the most important date outside of the Nick Nurse return is the Fred VanVleet return. We got to wait all the way until February 9th to see Fred VanVleet's return to Toronto. That's when the Rockets come to town. And then the Lakers, got to mention the Lakers, of course. Shout out to Lakers Nation. They're doing a live stream right now for the Lakers schedule. The Lakers come to town on April 2nd. So I got to wait all the way until April before I can talk some trash to Sean, Trevor, and everybody over at Lakers Nation. Hopefully the Raptors do end up winning that game. And these are just some quick notes about the Raptors schedule. According to Blake Murphy, the Raptors' strength of schedule based on the 2022-2023 records is 15th. The Raptors have 14 back-to-backs. Miles traveled for the Raptors will be the second fewest, so maybe that benefits them and helps them in the long haul when it comes to this regular season grind. And then the number of nationally televised games for the Raptors, this one caught me off guard. 3, which is the fewest in the league. Now, I wasn't expecting the Raptors to get a whole ton of national TV games. I wasn't expecting them to get double-digit national TV games. But you're talking about the Raptors having the fewest national TV games in the league, fewer than the Washington Wizards and Charlotte Hornets. That is unbelievable. But that just proves that the Raptors are going to have to work extra hard this season to garner respect and attention, because a lot of people are sleeping on the Raptors going into the season. A lot of people do not expect the Raptors to be a good team. And I mean, this is one of those seasons that you don't know how it's going to go for the Toronto Raptors. A lot of unknowns. Okay, now let's take a look at the schedule at large together. So we are going to go month by month here, and I'm just going to give you my reaction to what I see and how the months are ultimately going to shape up for the Raptors. So we're going to start with October here. First couple of games for the Raptors in October. As I mentioned, they will begin their season at home against Minnesota. Interesting to see the Raptors begin their season against a Western Conference opponent. Minnesota, they're not going to be an easy win there. That's going to be a team that's going to be looking to take the next step. Of course, Anthony Edwards, I'm looking forward to what his development is going to be with that T-Wolves team. Then the Raptors will be on the road for the first road game, October 27th, as they will take on the Chicago Bulls for the first time since the Bulls eliminated them from the play-in tournament. So let's see if the Raptors can get some revenge there. Then the Raptors will welcome Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse will make his Toronto return on October 28th, and that will be the Raptors' third game of the season. So that is definitely going to be an electric building. That game's going to be on a Saturday night. You know, Scotiabank's going to be buzzing. And then the Raptors close out October against Portland. So fairly reasonable start to the schedule here for the Raptors, I mean, outside of that Sixers game, well, I mean, I'm not even going to say the Sixers game is going to be tough because who knows how the Sixers are going to open up their season with all the drama they're dealing with right now with James Harden. So these are 4 games that the Raptors should have a relatively, I don't want to say easy time with, but these are all 4 winnable games in my opinion. And I think the toughest one's going to be that first game against Minnesota. You get through that first game with a win, I think the Raptors can maybe build some momentum as they head into November, and that's when the schedule starts to get tough. And yeah, the Raptors will have their first back-to-back of the season. They will take on Milwaukee and Philadelphia. Then they will see Victor Wembanyama for the first time. Then they have Dallas, Boston, Washington, Milwaukee. Boston again, that will be the first game of the in-season tournament. And again, these in-season games are going to count towards the Raptors' regular season record. Detroit, Orlando, Indiana, Chicago, Cleveland, Brooklyn, Phoenix. So this is a tough month for the Raptors in essence because I see the Wizards being the lone bad team that the Raptors could take advantage of. But you look outside of that Wizards game, these aren't going to be easy wins for the Toronto Raptors. I mean, you can make the argument Orlando, Indiana, Detroit, that could be a relatively easier 3-game stretch. But I think Orlando and Indiana especially are going to be much more improved than a season ago. But yeah, if I have to look at November in a nutshell, I think the Raptors have to take advantage of this 4-game stretch right here from the 19th to the 24th. You got Detroit, Orlando, Indiana, Chicago. You should be able to get a few wins there, 3 being the best case scenario. All 4 would be the best case scenario, but I think you at least got to take 3 considering that you have a tough schedule outside of that. I mean, aside from that Washington game, you're going to be taking on some teams that are expected to do some big things this season. So it is going to be important for the Raptors to get off to a good start this season. Cannot emphasize that enough. The Raptors need to come out of the gate gunning. And we saw last season, they did not get off to such a great start. And that translates into the new year. So November is going to be a key month for the Raptors. Okay, now we head on over to December. And the Raptors will have the Knicks on December 1st. Then they'll have some time between this because this is when the NBA in-season tournament will be in their knockout rounds. Then they have the Knicks again. And this is where we'll have some of those back-to-back matchups against teams. This is something that the NBA did a lot of last season where you face the opponent essentially in a mini baseball-like series. So they got the Knicks twice. They got Atlanta twice. They got Charlotte. Denver, like I said, the champions will be at Scotiabank Arena for the first time on the 20th. They got the Sixers again, the 22nd, the Jazz, the 23rd, right before Christmas. And then out of Christmas, they got Washington, Boston, Detroit. So December is a lot more lenient to the Raptors than November. Just taking a look at here, quick glance. I mean, the Knicks, we know the Raptors have had an amazing track record against the Knicks. They did a good job against the Knicks last season, even though the Knicks made the playoffs, the Raptors did not. Atlanta is a team that the Raptors can definitely beat, and they're going to have to beat teams like the Knicks and Atlanta if the Raptors do want to be a playoff team. So these 4 games in a row are going to be absolutely huge for the Raptors to assert dominance. Then you got Charlotte. That's another team you should definitely be able to beat. And then you got Denver. So the first couple of games to begin December, all winnable until you got to take on Denver. Then you got to take on Philly. But again, we don't know the state in which Philly's going to be at this point. Then you got Utah. They, of course, did a lot of good things last season. They should be better this season. Washington, very winnable game. You got Boston, always tough. And then Detroit, winnable game. So December is a lot more lenient to the Raptors than November. So far, it's looking like November is that tough stretch of basketball for the Raptors. As we enter 2024 here and take a look at the Raptors' January games, they got Cleveland to begin the new year, Memphis. That's going to be Darko Rajakovic's. Yeah, that's the first time they're taking on Memphis, right? So far. Yeah, that will be the first meeting against Memphis. So Darko going up against this old team for the first time on January 3rd. Sacramento, Golden State, Lakers, Clippers. So this is going to be a rough West Coast trip for the Raptors right here. And it's usually always at the beginning of January or somewhere in January. You got Memphis, they're not going to go away. Sacramento, we know how good of a season they had last year, although the Raptors did beat Sacramento in Sacramento last season. Then you got Golden State, Lakers, Clippers. Oh, and then the Jazz. I forgot about this one. So this is the tough stretch on the West Coast for the Raptors. All these games are going to be an absolute gauntlet. And if the Raptors survive that, then they have Boston, Miami, Chicago, New York, Memphis again, the Clippers. That's when Kawhi, if he's playing at that time, hopefully he's healthy, comes to Toronto, Atlanta, and Chicago to close out January. So January is looking pretty tough too, just because it starts ridiculously tough with that West Coast trip. You're talking about 6 matchups in a row that you're going to be playing out on the West Coast against Western Conference teams that should be able to compete at a high level. And I'm even going to put Utah in that category because I do think Utah could potentially take a leap. And then once you get past that, you got to take on Boston and Miami. So yeah, January is shaping up to be a tough month. There's not an easy game here in this January. And you could argue that January is probably, to this point, the toughest month of the schedule just because of how many road games they're playing. And there's literally not one easy win in this month of January. I mean, the only team you can make an argument for are the Knicks, just because the Raptors have a good track record against the Knicks, and I guess the Bulls as well. But outside of that, yeah, January is going to be tough as we move on here to February. And the Raptors' first game in February will be against Fred VanVleet and the new look Houston Rockets. This will be in Houston. As you look on to February 9th, that will mark Fred VanVleet's official return to Toronto. And that's going to be an electric game Friday night. They knew what they were doing with that one. But yeah, so they have Houston, OKC, New Orleans, Charlotte, Houston again. So this is a good stretch of games for the Raptors, reasonable for sure, especially if the Rockets don't perform to the expectations placed on them. I'm really interested to see how the Rockets are going to look. Like I said on my own channel, Luca Rosano, the Rockets are either going to be, in my opinion, really good or really bad. So yeah, they got Fred coming to town on February 9th, and they got Cleveland, San Antonio, Indiana, Brooklyn, Atlanta, Indiana, Dallas. So right now, I'll tell you guys this. February looks like the easiest month for the Raptors in terms of their competition. You got a lot of teams that are unknown of how they're going to perform this season. Like I said, Indiana, I expect them to be better, but you still don't know. How is Atlanta going to look? How is Brooklyn going to look? How is San Antonio going to look with Wemby? Are they still going to need some time before they are a legitimate team? Probably so. How is Houston going to look? Charlotte's going to probably be bad. How is New Orleans going to look? Are they going to be able to stay healthy, especially Zion? So February right now have a lot of question marks in terms of the opponents the Raptors are going up against. This should be the month the Raptors clean up when it comes to winning these games. They got to take advantage of this February, which is shaping up to being a very, very reasonable month and the easiest month so far for the Raptors. So you got to get wins here against these teams that you don't know if they're going to be good or just downright bad. And then the Raptors will enter March, and they got Golden State coming to town. They got Charlotte, New Orleans, Phoenix, Portland, Denver, Detroit. They got Orlando a couple of times. Another team that you don't know if they're going to be much more improved this season. Sacramento, OKC, Washington, Brooklyn, New York, Philly. So overall, another reasonable month, I would say. I know you got Golden State, you got Phoenix, you do got Denver, but you got a couple of teams here that you're going to have to beat for sure if you want to be a playoff team. You know, Detroit, you got to take advantage of that back-to-back set against Orlando. You got Sacramento. That's going to be tough. OKC is always tough. Washington, Brooklyn, New York. So it's going to be important for the Raptors to beat teams like the Knicks, the Nets, teams that were playoff teams a season ago if they want to be a playoff team. You got to obviously take advantage of teams that were below you last season, Detroit, Orlando. So March overall is looking like another reasonable month for the Toronto Raptors. Their toughest game is going to be against the defending champs, Nuggets. And outside of that, I would probably have, the Suns for sure on the 7th, and then Golden State. But outside of those 3 games, these are games that the Raptors can definitely win. And I'll put Sacramento in that definitely win category on March 20th because the Raptors were competitive against Sacramento last season. And then that is going to take us to April to conclude the season Raptors going to be hosting the Lakers for the first time April 2nd. That's going to be a great game. And like I said, I'm going to enjoy some banter with the Lakers Nation guys when it comes to that game. We might even do a live stream for it. I'm not sure yet. The Raptors take on Minnesota for the second time, April 3rd. So, wow, the Raptors start the season against Minnesota, and then they don't see Minnesota again until April 3rd. They got the Bucks, Washington, Indiana, Brooklyn, and then at Miami. And this could actually be an interesting end to the Raptors season in terms of play-in implications. Miami was a play-in team last season, and we know they went all the way to the finals. Brooklyn is probably going to be a play-in team too. Same with Indiana. So these last 4 games of the season could be all meaningful games when it comes to play-in implications and potentially even playoff implications. So this April shaping up to be an important month, because you even look at the Lakers, Minnesota. These are games for those teams that could be important when it comes to playoff seeding. Milwaukee's probably going to wrap up a top seed, so this probably won't mean much. And then Washington at this point is probably going to be dead last, I would say. But outside of Milwaukee and Washington, these other games are going to mean something to the other teams. So that could shape up a good finish, an important finish for the Raptors regular season schedule. That is just my quick reaction to it. Like I said, I gave you some notes at the top here. We went through it together. Raptors Nation, what is your reaction to the Raptors 2023-2024 regular season schedule? Do you think the Raptors can take advantage of some of those easier months? Do you think they'll be able to get through the gauntlet that is January when they have that West Coast trip? November looks pretty tough. Let me know what your expectations are for the Raptors going into this season. Leave your comments down below. Again, please drop a 5-star review on Apple iTunes and Spotify for this podcast. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe over here. That is it for me. This is Luca signing off. Until next time, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe.